Hello, this is Dr. Making Stuff, and this is Screenshot, Episode 2. Today we are reviewing Godannar, also known as Godannar, also known as half a dozen other things, because the way that you say this word is weird. Okay, I have a lot to say about this show, specifically as it slots into a period of time that I'm fascinated with, which is the mecha anime dark ages of the early 2000s post-Evangelion landscape. Because if you don't know, Evangelion is a deconstructionist work, much like The Watchmen is for superhero media, and everything that came after it is weird, and either a response to it, ignoring it, an imitation of it, or a fucking mess of all four of those responses, right? Like, or all three of those responses. So it's either Evangelion, but here's this alternative point, or Evangelion because Evangelion is cool, or we're not doing Evangelion, we're ignoring Evangelion, right? Or Godannar, which is just this mess, this absolute mess that doesn't know what it wants to be in a post-Eva landscape. Now, a sneeze individually is not fascinating. A sneeze is a symptom, and it's useful for diagnosing a condition, right? I think as a symptom of the dark ages of the mecha genre, Godannar is fascinating because it tells me a lot about where creators' heads were at that period of time, circa 2003, right? But on its own, it's not very interesting. So, just okay in every regard. Like, I really don't have much to say about it. But, like, on the other hand, Godannar is part of a 2-hour video essay about the post-Evangelion giant robot timeline, whatever, philosophy. There's a whole bunch to say, right? It's just that none of it has to do with just Godannar or Godannar or whatever. It has to do with, like, the whole mecha genre. So the problem is, I can't really make this video as robust as it probably should be without partially covering shit that I'm going to cover in that eventual 2-hour video essay thing that I'll probably make 50 years from now, given my release schedule. So, you're going to get, like, a lazy Godannar review. And I hate for that to be, like, episode 2 of Screenshot, because it feels like it should be, like, a really cool anime, like Blue Lock, or Arcane, or Fearin', or whatever, you know, or like a cool old anime. I like reviewing those sometimes. Like maybe I would do Record of the Lodos War or something like that. But no, the second review of Screenshot is Godannar because I watched it and I don't know. I feel like I shouldn't just review good shows. I should review everything. And I need you to understand, Godannar is fascinating in spots, but the end result of all of that weirdness is a show that's just okay, right? It has peaks and valleys and whatever. Let me start off. Okay, the reason I started watching this show was because of a gif of a giant robot pilot getting into her giant robot and her ass jiggling, okay? I came to this show for very base reasons. I like 2D giant robots. I've always liked 2D giant robots. I've wanted to be a pilot of a giant robot since I was a little kid, ever since I watched Gundam Wing back in the 90s, okay? I have a huge history with the mecha genre. I hate 3D giant robots because they always look like weird PlayStation 2 graphics. I just want to see my giant robots be hand-drawn. I know it's a lot to ask in the modern day, but I like it, okay? I like original 2D giant fucking robots fighting each other, usually to epic music. I love my Big O's. I love my Gundams. You know, I'm not like a bigger mecha fan than I am every other genre. Like, I'm more of a shonen fan than I am a mecha fan. But I like robots in the real world. And I like anime. And so anime robots is pretty fucking cool, right? And then this show also promised to have boobs and ass. And I like my fair share of fan service, whatever. So it's like, this show has giant robots that are 2D and TNA. It has all the things that I came to it for. Godannar did not, like, lie to me, okay? It's just that, you know, it tries to be so much more than what it is. Like, it's just like a weird, ecchi robot show, and you would think it wouldn't be that hard to just phone it in and not screw that up. But Godannar, like, half-assedly tries to say things, and it's weird, and it bogs the whole show down, but it's also fascinating because the reason it feels the need to try to say stuff is because of the weird anime Dark Ages that was going on at the time. So, it's a very cattywampus show to be reviewing, and I, for a long time, I wasn't going to review it. I wanted to move on to Freerun. That's Freerun Beyond the Journey or Beyond the Journey's End or whatever. I really enjoy Freerun. I have a lot of like crazy shit to say about it once I watch it completely all the way through. But like, and then rewatch it for the review purposes. But Godannar is something that's just been on my mind, and I cannot like review anything else until I've reviewed fucking Godannar. So here we go. Now, I usually do like a summary of my thoughts on the show, but as previously mentioned, for all of the aforementioned reasons, I'm going to skip my actual thoughts. I just don't think it's important for me to go over them because whatever. This review is just, should you watch it? Should you not watch it? Here we go. Visuals. So this was released by Bandai, or like a subset of them, in the 2004, and you can tell that the budget wasn't like immense or whatever, but it's a 2-season anime, and they had the budget for that entire 2 seasons, so it looks alright. Like, jiggle physics is, obviously was a high priority, and there's reruns of animation, but that's normal in mecha fiction when it comes to like assembling the robot or launching the robot or whatever. And then like the robot animations are really good, like there's times where you see parts move or the mechanic stuff work, and it's just like, it's a giant robot show, and you're like, wow, I appreciate that level of fucking detail or whatever. So visuals are a 1 out of 2. Like, I give them like a half point on that, because it's not that the visuals are bad necessarily, it's just that they're stale. Lots of stiff, awkward movements, lots of weird in-between frames, lots of still animation with words over it, lots of, like, all the weird, awkward shit from the early 2000s that you'd see in anime is in this anime. Like, I feel like if you were to boil down the entire early 2000s response to the fucking giant robot genre in one place, like the Dark Age of Mecha in one place, Godannar is like that hub. And that includes the weird, awkward animation that's sometimes good and sometimes bad and sometimes just middling, right? So, 1 out of 2 for the visuals. Music. There's like 2 songs in this entire thing, and it's the Godannar theme, like the theme song. Literally, parts of it played over and over again. And like this one sad contemplative theme, and that's basically it. And then there's like remixes on those 2. There might be more, but like honestly, none of it is memorable enough to stand out. I watched the English version, but let me be real, I saw the mouth flaps. There's people talking over each other all the time in this show. The plot is so annoying and the characters are so annoying that like I can tell you that the voices are annoying, probably even in Japanese, even though I didn't listen to the Japanese version, just based off the pace of the dialogue. There was no way to make this sound good. There's no way to have this many humans talking over each other and for it to sound okay. And, maybe that's not a problem in the Japanese. I don't know. But I listened to the English, and the English dub is, like, pretty bad. Like, pretty fucking terrible. You can't hear what people are saying sometimes. And even then, everybody is shouting and only has one emotion. And, oh my god. One emotion, and every character expresses it really hard. So the sound isn't doing anything, but there is cool mech effects. So I decided to make it 0+. This is the first time, I swear, that there has ever been a score where it's like, you get a 0, but I'm giving you a half grade for effort, right? Like, 0 means that it did not work, like, at all. But on the other hand, there's mech sound effects where I'm like, that certainly does sound like robot parts clicking together. Right? Like, where I have to appreciate that the mechs sound cool. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about mech designs here for a moment. I skipped this in visuals, but I think it's an important point, just that the mech designs are, like, really confused and inconsistent. And, like, there's one mech that looks really, really cool, but the character that pilot that mech dies. So it's like, Anyways, so the actual setting. There was a war between giant robots and mimetic beasts 5 years ago. this guy called Gojin fought in it and saved the world or whatever. Now, 5 years later, the mimetic beasts seem to be reorganizing, and we've got to defeat them or everything's gonna die. Thus is the setting of Godannar. It's the near future or something, right? It's like Pacific Rim, right? It's like Pacific Rim, except like with all the life sucked out of it. Like, you know how in Pacific Rim, like, kaiju parts were used for, like, cooking and medicine and all kinds of stuff, and, like, the world had to change its infrastructure and whatever. And it was, like, vaguely the future, but still close enough that there was, like, some recognizable way things worked because an apocalypse happened and that slowed certain cultural developments. Okay, so imagine that, except you suck everything interesting out of it, and it's just vaguely like our world, except sometimes there's future stuff. That is Godannar. 1 plus. I guess the reason for the plus in the setting is because of the fact that, like, it at least acknowledges that certain things would change when you had to use giant robots to save the world. Like, there's sports that have giant robots in them. Like, giant robots is something that's taught in high school because they're trying to find the next bestest pilot or whatever. So, like, I appreciate that the world acknowledges that there was a big war with giant monsters. It's just so ham-fistedly done that it doesn't feel as good as it could. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels like they could have gone farther building up a world that feels lived in and real. And this just doesn't. Maybe part of that is because we're on a sterile military base with silver hallways for most of the time, or we're just vaguely in nature. But, like, I don't know. When we're in the city, it just feels like regular Japanese city, except robots sometimes. Instead of the future, and it is like the year 2045. It should be marketably different from like what we have right now. So the setting gains a point because it tries. In fact, it gains a 1.5, but it doesn't quite get there to the point where it would be like, oh, a 2 out of 2. Like, it doesn't elevate the thing too far. Then there's the characters. They're all one note, and they only have one emotion, and usually they have some kind of complexity, like, this one is married to a child, or this one is a Russian dominatrix, or this one is a British guy who's in love with his sister, but also a fuckboy, and these two are lesbians, or whatever. Like, but beyond those complications, romantically, there's, like, or ecchi-wise, or whatever their gimmick is, there's absolutely nothing that any of these characters have to say about anything, despite the fact that they make it seem like they're going to. And also, all of these characters basically just scream whatever their thing is the whole time. And, like, the characters aren't interesting, and I don't think they're meant to be, but if they're not meant to be, then they waste way too much time on trying to develop them. Like, there's side characters that get, like, 2 entire episodes each, and then we just never see them again. Like, I don't know what Godannar is going for with its character work. Like, it obviously doesn't want its characters to be one-dimensional shells, otherwise it just wouldn't try, right? But it doesn't care about them being 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional even, because it also doesn't try. So I have no idea what it's doing, and 1 out of 2, you know, like, you gotta understand 0 is they didn't try at all, right? 1 is they tried, but it didn't work all the way, and 2 is it's a full point. It worked, right? So it's got to be a 1 out of 2 because, like, I can tell somebody gave a shit. Somebody's like, oh wow, this guy was in a war. He should have post-traumatic stress, or this girl loves this guy, so she should try to learn how to cook. Like, there's, like, somebody cared, but they didn't have a very clear idea of what they were doing. I don't know. The show is ancient. And also there's, like, weird... Okay, so, like, I'm not your politics guy, okay? I'm not your big lefty or righty that has, like, oh, the media that we consume says a lot about our morals and, like, who we are as a people and blah, 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 blah. I'm not that guy, okay? I'm here to, like, enjoy a good story. If it affects me, it affects me. If it doesn't, it doesn't. People out there that can't separate their media from reality or whatever, I'm not that. So me watching weird-based, old, cringe, early 2000s stuff should not indicate what my morality is. That being said, woo, is this thing a product of the early 2000s? And, you know, fucking trigger warning for all that entails if you go to watch the show, right? Like, boy, do we have things to say. about the way men and women interact, what constitutes a real man, gay relationships. Just, oh, wow, were we being Japan in the early 2000s with this show. Some people might think that's a great thing. Some people might think that's a bad thing. But holy shit, is it not a thing? There were multiple times in this show where I was just like, what? Right? Because culturally, that's just not where we're at in a lot of ways. Now, I prefer honesty to us just not talking about anything because we don't want to offend anybody, right? Like, I would prefer the baseness of Godannar to something where they are not able to say anything because of the fact that they're afraid they might offend somebody. That being said, it's not just baseness, it's that, like, the thoughts themselves are immature. Like, it's clear that no discussion has yet been had at the time of Godannar's making about, like, gender roles or what things mean or anything. You know what I mean? Like, you can just tell this is like, on the one hand, the venom isn't there. Like, the you either agree with me or you can fuck off venom isn't there. But on the other hand, neither is the maturity of the perspective of considering other people's, like, viewpoints. Without going super duper deep into it, it's like, it's immature, right? That's all I can say about the things that this show has to say about relationships and gender. It's immature, and mileage on that may vary. I didn't mind it because I remember watching shows at this time that were like this, right? And I also saw society at this point, lived in society at this point. I was at this point at one point, and then I grew up with society on these subjects. That being said, right, mileage may vary. If going back and watching a show like, you know, early South Park or whatever bothers you, if you can't stand things that you think are cringe, you know, Godannar might not be your thing, right? It's not terrible. It's not terrible. It's not the worst of this kind of thing, right? I've seen more awkward stuff in anime. I'm just saying, like, mileage may fucking vary. Let's see. Where are we at? Story, I guess we're at story. I put a 1 out of 2. They try to plot They try to plop 3 seasons of plot, 3 seasons of fucking plot into the last 2 episodes. Like, they try to do, like, the end of Evangelion thing where, like, they blow your fucking mind with how, like, weird the plot is in the last act, but, like, it doesn't work at all. It just makes you confused because they start throwing around a bunch of terms and introducing a bunch of characters that weren't in the story previously, and I have nothing to say about the story, right? Because the story doesn't know what it's trying to say either. The TLDR on deconstructionist media and its effect, right, without me making my 2-hour spiel, is essentially this, right? You can either embrace the deconstruction and respond to it, a la Eureka 7, in the case of comic books with superheroes and Watchmen, Astro City. There's a few Reconstructionist works that are like, I saw your big criticism and raise you this point, right? Actually, this media isn't bad, whatever. Or this genre isn't bad. It has things to say. We can still tell worthwhile stories. So there's your Reconstructionist media, right? For superheroes, Invincible is also one of these, right? Where it takes the criticisms that Watchmen has and actually has something to say about them. Or you can just ignore that the deconstructionist thing happened at all. You can ignore your Evangelion, your Watchmen, your Madoka Magica, whatever, and just carry on as if that shit never happened. But not really, because it's still tinged by that little bit of worry, that little bit of anxiety, because you know that your genre has been completely deconstructed. And last, but not least, you can do a pale imitation of that deconstructionist work because being edgy is cool. Godannar does, like, all 3 of these things at the same time, and its story is representative of that fact. And boy, oh boy, does it make it a mess. Yeah, 1 out of 2. So, in summary, this is a show that is, at its best, just okay, and at its worst, kind of terrible. And it gets a 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10 isn't, like, bad, alright? 5 out of 10 is you can watch this show without it doing psychic damage to you. I couldn't because I'm super duper critical and I'm always thinking about the genres and whatever. So it did like a lot. But if you just want to have like a good time and watch giant robots go pew pew and watch boobies go womp womp and whatever, then this show does those things. Like the things I went to Godannar for happened. Just a lot of other things happened too, and most of them were unnecessary. So, should you watch Godannar 2003? No. Can you? Sure. You know, it won't kill you, right? Like watching Godannar is like, if you just want to watch like 2D robots do their thing, like if you just want to watch the most basic giant robot show ever, I don't know if I can necessarily recommend this, but I also can't like put it down, you know what I mean? Like if you're adjusted for Japanese weirdness, if you're an old school anime fan and you've seen some things, Godannar is not going to blow your mind, right? But if you're not like used to how weird and based and cringe Japan can be, especially in the early 2000s, this show, like if you're a newer anime fan, this show might blow your mind with how fucking weird it is. And if you're a giant robot fan and you want to like reminisce about the dark ages, like the post Evangelion, what the fuck do we do with this genre of everything? Godannar might be like a good time, no alcohol required. I don't know. 5 out of 10. It's a very okay, very mid show. And now that I've done this review, I don't have to talk about it anymore, and I can review other things. Also, I'm pretty sure that the editing on this is going to be super duper lazy. I'm sorry for that. I couldn't be bothered to go find clips for this show. I know the show is called Screenshot, but in this case it's a singular screenshot probably, because I just cannot be asked to go hunt down and rewatch this show and like get a bunch of screenshots for it and edit it. Nope, you guys are getting this. I'm not even going to edit the audio too much. I'm going to like cut out some ums and ers and like some breaths per usual, and then I'm going to like post this thing up. This has been Dr. Making Stuff with Screenshot. Thank you for watching. I promise the next anime I review will be something I actually give a shit about, and there will be more than one screenshot, and we will edit it, and it'll be good. It'll be great. And I'm pretty sure that show is going to be near a 10 out of 10 or something. So like we'll be breaking new we'll be reviewing something that's over a 7 probably, which isn't that cool? Isn't that just freaking awesome that we're finally reviewing something that's like not mid? I can't wait to actually get to screenshots where we're reviewing stuff that's awful and stuff that's amazing. I watched Godannar and I felt like I needed to review it, so here's your Godannar review. Goodbye. This is Dr. Making Stuff signing out.